nobody gets to this level of fame without some sort of like sacrifice or ritual. Still to this day, people are obsessed with Marilyn Monroe. They just can't get her out of their heads.
Yeah.
It's amazing what a figure they turned her into.
Yeah. And it gets even darker too, because things are coming out like her body disappeared for 7 or 8 hours after. There's a very rich man who paid to like have himself buried on top of her with the face down.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of The Shift with Gina. As you can see, we have a very special guest today. You know, I don't normally do guests on my show. It's usually a solo podcast, but today I have a friend in the studio named Jamie Hanshaw. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I met Jamie through her husband, Jay Dyer, and we met just a couple of times kind of at events here and there. But I'm really excited to have her on today because we're going to talk about a few things that I've never talked about on my channel before, but we'll also talk about some stuff that I like to cover a lot, like birth control and the sort of depopulation agenda that's related to birth control. I really want to get into the origins of the birth control pill because I think you know some more about, like, was it the Rockefeller family that's sort of behind the pill? We'll get into all that, but that's the kind of content we'll talk about today. But first, do you want to intro yourself and tell people who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Gina Hanshaw, and I have a show on YouTube called Out of This World, and I have a show on Rockfin called Conspiracy Science Theater. I am a tinfoil hat, original OG conspiracy theorist. I have 3 books, 2 I still sell and 1 I don't sell because there's a lot of things in there that I don't agree with anymore since I converted to Orthodoxy.
Yeah. I love that about you too, because you and your husband were the first ones that introduced Orthodoxy to my husband and me. So, you know, we love you guys for that. It's really neat to be introduced to ancient Christianity and the ancient faith. My husband and I haven't been chrismated yet, but we did baptize our daughter in February, which was really exciting.
Oh, nice. Many years.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So we're excited to just even have found the church. But yeah, so you're holding a book there called Hollywood Mind Control. That's the first book of Jamie's that I sort of went through. And before we started filming, I was saying how I think it's so fascinating that you covered stars like Beyonce, Lady Gaga, Britney Spears, and how they have been used as these pawns in culture to have this massive influence over teens and young women. And then you told me this book was written in 2015. So there's been a lot that's happened since then. Yes. I mean, especially with Britney Spears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that really validates everything that I posit in this book. This is actually the 3rd book that I have written, and this was more of a case study of mind control. So I took 5 female pop stars and I wrote about their rise to fame and what they talk about and their songs, and the frame that I put on it was it's MK Ultra. It's monarch mind control and Satanism. And so when we do our live shows, I talk a lot about how our culture is based on a system of magic by a guy named Aleister Crowley. You've probably heard of him.
Yeah.
And his magic is called Thelema. It's all about your will and will to power and will over love. And so this is kind of the hidden religion of the 21st century and of Hollywood. And a lot of people adhere to this in secret and openly. Now it's coming out now more, like through performances, Super Bowls, Grammys. So I've been writing about those things for at least 15 years. And me and my friends were probably the first to talk about high-profile rituals. So like a Grammy Super Bowl halftime show is not just a performance, it is a magic ritual. If you know magic, you can spot the different symbols and phrases that they use. So what I talk about is that Aleister Crowley tries to bring in this Aeon of Horus, the Egyptian hawk-headed god. So in his timeline, we are entering into this new revolutionary epoch era. And it is going to be defined by warfare, because Horus was the god of war, and selfishness, childlike behavior, because they call Horus the crowned and conquering child. So everybody they think is going to be, obsessed with warfare and just selfish, right? And Horus's counterpart is called the Scarlet Woman, or Babylon. So if you're watching these performances, they're using Scarlet Woman imagery so many times.
Wow.
Like, for instance, Katy Perry, when she came out on her Super Bowl halftime show, she was riding this giant lion.
Yeah.
And she's wearing a flaming dress. And so in my book, I show you how all of these symbols aren't just arbitrary. It wasn't just an artistic expression to, like, be riding a lion. This is actually like a tarot card from Aleister Crowley's deck. It was called the Lust card. And it looks exactly like Katy Perry on her lion. So that's just one example of, high-profile rituals. Even like Madonna does this all the time. Madonna's Super Bowl was a high-profile ritual. She was kind of an amalgamation of different Babylonian goddess, Egyptian imagery, stuff like that. And so was the Scarlet Woman in their magical understanding is Kali from India, and the Whore of Babylon from Revelation. And so they're using a lot of imagery. And so I talk about spells and magic as if this was real.
Right.
Because I think it is real.
Yeah.
And a long time ago, I say everyone is under a spell, and they didn't understand what I was talking about. So that's why I wrote these books.
Yeah.
I'm like laying out, this is what magic is. It's not like just pulling rabbits out of hats. It's transformative psychodrama that transforms the person practicing it. And if you go the sorcerer path, then you are supposed to be practicing mind control on people, how to hypnotize them, how to get them to carry out your will for you.
So what about the most recent Super Bowl halftime show with Rihanna, and they were all wearing white or red or something?
They're wearing red and white, and so again, Scarlet Woman. That one was kind of tame because she was pregnant, so it wasn't overtly sexual as like a J-Lo and those types.
Yeah.
But definitely Scarlet Woman imagery. Rihanna is one that uses a lot of the monarch symbols. I think she's probably been through that monarch program.
Okay.
And then they didn't show this on the live feed, but if you go back and watch other recordings of it, she was doing that, this thing.
Yes.
And so I can show you like different rituals where they actually, that comes from Kabbalah, it comes from ritual magic.
What does it mean?
This one is Aleister Crowley ritual, and it's called the Triangle of Manifestation, or the Sign of the Fire Goddess. So you see Jay-Z doing that. You see, I have like some tables of hand signs and gestures that you can look at. And then I was trying to find that table of the monarch symbols that you will find on all of their videos. If you have another question, I'll flip.
Yeah, because I remember when that Rihanna Super Bowl halftime show came out, there were a lot of people that were like, actually, that was a good one because it wasn't overtly sexual. No one was twerking, and, it was much more family friendly. And I just remember watching and thinking to myself, there's something really dark going on here. It seems like there are some kind of messages that are being conveyed to us here that maybe we don't even really understand.
And sometimes it's super overt, like the Sam Smith.
Yes, that's a recent one too. Yeah, everyone's been talking about, because it almost seems like Sam Smith and a lot of artists, it seems like all of a sudden they flip. You know what I mean? It's like, because Katy Perry started out as kind of like this pinup, cute-ish kind of girl. I mean, like, yeah, it was definitely pop and sexual, but it seems like these artists, like all of a sudden overnight, they just flip and start doing all this like satanic imagery. And it's just, it's bizarre.
Katy Perry actually started as a
As a Christian artist,
pop
right?
Christian
Yeah,
singer.
like gospel singer.
Yeah, so she was raised in like a Christian family, but she has ties to Timothy Leary, or her dad does.
Okay.
So there's sus things going on in her family and her past. But here is one of the tables that I made about signs of monarch programming on these girls.
Okay.
And the first one is going to be the butterflies. Monarch butterflies, butterfly tattoos, butterflies in the videos, butterflies in poignant places where it's not just like pretty garden aesthetic, but it's like a monarch butterfly. So the second one would be alternate personalities, which so many pop stars have.
Sasha Fierce, Beyonce.
Fierce. And going back, I mean, Eminem, Slim Shady.
Right.
David Bowie has Ziggy Stardust.
Yep.
So lots of pop stars take on this new persona, kind of like we do in Orthodoxy, where you take a new name. And the old person is kind of, the sinful person is dead, and now you're the new person. But so a lot of black magic rituals are actually inverted Christian rituals.
Right.
Right.
Wow.
And then the third one would be like possession or satanic imagery. And do you remember Beyonce's Super Bowl performance?
Yeah.
Where they were making memes of her because she looked possessed, like dancing like she was.
Yeah.
And she has even said that in interviews, like something takes over me. And
wow.
I don't know what I'm doing on stage, and this is why I'm able to perform in a crazy way, right? And then the fourth one would be beta kitten sexual programming. So cat ears, leopard print.
Yeah, this new artist Doja Cat.
Doja Cat, exactly. And so I talk about how a lot of this stuff leads into transhumanism. And one of the stepping stones to that is, TRANS.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be trans species after that, and then transhuman with robotic integration, nanotechnology and stuff like that. So anything that goes against the way that God created us is what they want.
Right. So yeah, and essentially placing human as God.
Right.
Yeah.
And just kind of altering the image of God by altering humans. So she showed up. I don't know if she got the surgery or not, but she did have like more cat-like features.
Yes.
Implants or makeup. I don't know if it was either one of those.
Here, the cheekbones. Yeah.
And Lady Gaga was doing that for a while with her monster era, where she was like having horns and looking sharp cheekbones and just otherworldly, right? So, and then you have the occult hand signs. You have like this and the triangle of manifestation. I just saw a clip of Lady Gaga and Helen Mirren at a award show, and they were doing this to each other in a very meaningful way, right? So they always throw up these hand signs. What else? Masks and bondage. So,
of course,
bondage themes in music videos, that's a telltale sign. Masks.
Huge in all the Lady Gaga music videos.
Right.
Those are like two of the biggest things she does is masks and bondage.
And S&M type whips, chains, anything that symbolizes slavery, because, at the end of the day, like serving Satan is slavery.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's the worst narcissistic abusive relationship you could imagine.
Yeah.
And then what else?
But they make it sound like it's freedom. It's funny, isn't it? Because they make it sound like it makes it sound like Christ is slavery, like following these Christian values is something that's going to be oppressive to you. And they make it sound like it's so freeing to serve the self, but it's really the biggest form of bondage there is.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have multiplicity, broken mirrors, or hypnotic imagery. So it's so many videos if you watch with your eyes open. At the end of it, they wake up as if it was all a dream. So they go through the entire adventure of their video, their song, and then the end is like they're coming out of this disassociative state, and everything that they went through was a dream. Broken mirrors is a big one because of the fractured personality. So because MK Ultra and Project Monarch is to fracture your psyche into different parts. that operate independently and don't know what the others are doing. It's very, very deep, scientific. Like, you can study this for a long time.
Wow.
And I can give you some book references, or if you want me to mention that, people who are experts in this fractured psyche programming. So broken mirrors, hypnotic imagery, spirals.
A lot of spirals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The black and white, the
Yep.
classic, like, carnival hypnotism.
Yep.
So they'll stick that in the video too. Wizard of Oz is a huge one. So when they portray Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland, because these are two important esoteric tales
Okay.
to the cabal. And Marilyn Monroe obsession, I just kind of threw that in there because she's purportedly one of the first big stars that went through this programming, and that's why she's such a huge icon even today.
Yeah, I mean, they just did that. What was the movie? Was it a movie called Blonde?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and still to this day, people are obsessed with Marilyn Monroe. They just can't get her out of their heads.
Yeah.
It's amazing what a figure they turned her into.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like, and people take pleasure out of her pain and her suffering.
And it gets even darker, too, because things are coming out like her body disappeared for 7 or 8 hours after.
Yeah.
And, like, what were they doing with her?
I
And
know.
then one of the, there's a very rich man who paid to, like, have himself buried on top of her with face down in the, what do you call those? The crypt.
The crypt.
Yeah. On top of her. So it's like she was sexually abused very bad.
Yeah, from a young age for a long time.
And even after death.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So it essentially, I mean, a very short way to say it is that nobody gets to this level of fame without some sort of like sacrifice or ritual, or I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. It's like
It's levels
an
of
initiation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So any magical order is going to have your, your neophytes. Even Freemasonry is like this. You go through the grades of initiation. You don't actually know what you have gotten yourself into until you reach the end of it, because you're misled, because they want to keep these things hidden at the higher levels.
Right.
And so you don't actually know what you have joined until you are in too deep.
And then you can't get out.
Right.
So what about like someone like Britney Spears, especially now that she's released from the conservatorship? I mean, there are a lot of these videos, and I've been watching a lot of stuff. My friends send me TikToks. I'm never on TikTok. I mean, I have one and I just post and kind of get out. But if I do ever go onto TikTok, it's because I watch the Britney Spears TikToks where they're slowing down these videos of her dancing and they show that her tattoos like disappear or they're not there. And so a lot of people are saying that it's not her and that someone is putting on the AI of Britney Spears and they're dancing and acting like her, but when her arms go above her head and come back down, you can see a split second to where it's actually not her face. It's somebody with like brown eyes or something. So what's going on with Britney these days?
She was actually the first case study that I ever heard of way back in 2006. I saw a homemade documentary called Anna Nicole, Britney, and Mind Control by a guy named Freeman. And I was like, this is crazy. So he was going through, like, point by point what I was explaining to you, how the Monarch program works and how these symbols are on her. And then she had that breakdown.
Yeah.
Back in the day, like her first one, where she's attacking paparazzi, she shaved her head. So that documentary went through the whole thing where how she kind of was groomed by Madonna. Madonna groomed Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears with that performance where she comes down the steps of a wedding cake and Madonna is the groom with the top hat. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that one.
Oh, okay. So that was 20 years ago almost. Wow. And when Britney and Christina were at their peak, right?
Yeah.
So, and Madonna is a Kabbalist, right? That's magic. And Freemasons are famous for wearing the ritual master will wear a top hat, a black silky top hat, like old-timey, English top hat. And so Madonna comes down and she weds Christina and Britney, who are in like wedding dresses, and kisses them on the mouth on live TV. And
oh, I do remember that.
Yeah.
I remember seeing clips of that. Oh.
And that went viral
Yes.
back in the day. And so this, to people who are aware, like this is an initiation into higher levels, right? So this starts Britney's downfall almost. And so we go into, I actually did like a 4-part series with Rachel Wilson on my YouTube channel about the whole life of Britney Spears, her parents, because she was groomed to be a performer.
Yeah, from a very
young age. Star Search and Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah.
Which I also talk a ton about Disney. So maybe if we ever do another show, we could just like focus on how bad Disney is. But
oh yeah, I would love to do like an entire episode on Disney.
Yeah. So this starts Britney's full-blown initiation into these, I don't know what you call it, just the dark era of pop stars.
Yeah.
And so then she has that breakdown. She says, I don't want people plugging things into me. I'm tired of people touching me. She shaves her head. It gets really deep because the blonde hair is a symbol of a goddess. She was wearing a Kabbalah necklace. She was wearing a Kabbalah bracelet. So that was the first time that they had to like rein her in, because I feel like the real Britney was a very sweet girl. She wouldn't want to be leading people to hell with her music, right? And the videos, like we do a videography of her music videos, and it tells this incredible dark story of mind control and, like I said, dissociation. And that is one of the chapters in this book. And so then she kind of went underground for a while. And then she pops back up like on TikTok. Like you said, it's not her. This whole debate, like what, Free Britney? Remember that a couple years ago, and her conservatorship and all of these things coming out. Drugging her, sending her to rehab, which in my opinion are just mind control centers. These celebrity-run rehabs where if you act up, they send you there. Right. And then you come back and act right. Like Kanye.
And Harley Pasternak.
Yeah. And so, where was I going with that? Oh, so it gets even weirder. I don't know. Like, this is way tinfoil hat territory, but clones. So a lot of people talk...
Avril Lavigne clone. I've heard that one.
Cloning is a real thing. I mean, they've been doing it since the 70s, and this is an underground technology. So there is a video that Britney Spears did called Break the Ice, where she is a cartoon, actually. And she crashes into this Eyes Wide Shut party. And she has to go to the basement and set off a bomb because the mansion is full of Britney clones in the underground basement. I'm just saying, this is like, it's getting out there. But
why would they make videos about it like that? You think it's...
People do talk about why do they tell on themselves.
Right.
So this has like a couple answers. In magic, karmically, you kind of have to give people a chance and tell them what you're doing to them.
I've heard Andrew Tate talk about this.
Okay.
Yeah, he was saying, and I never heard it before, but it's basically like if you tell people what you're doing, or if you're forthright about it, then it's not immoral or something like that.
In their mind, yes, it is karmically neutral if you tell someone... in an overt or covert way. Like, I told you, like, this, how can you argue if we put all our symbols? You're just too stupid to, but in trauma-based mind control, it's called a double bind. So if you tell someone, yeah, I've abused you and done all these things to you, and if they still want to serve you, then you've created this double-binded victim that is just like, you can control in any way.
Wow.
And it also has to do with did he say revelation of the method? So there's this whole thing in esoterica, like the externalization of the hierarchy is what they call it. And this plays into the New Age movement also. But they want to worship the devil in the open. So they trickle truth you and tiptoe to get people to accept. So it's like the Overton window of what is shocking and what people will accept and what they won't. Because, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have Sam Smith in his fishnets and his derriere on the Grammys with talking about Satan. But if you put it in incrementally, people get used to it. It's the frog in the boiling water.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah, because I even remember when, I remember in the early 2000s, I was thinking about, I was like, I don't remember seeing really any of this overt satanic imagery when I was a kid. And then I thought about just over the last 20 years, how things have gradually gotten worse and worse and worse. And it's like they push it until it becomes pretty normal. And then you're like, oh, it's just artistic expression, when it's pretty clear that it's not.
And I mean, that kind of stuff used to be reserved for super Megadeth, heavy metal, black metal. Yeah. At least you knew what you're getting into. But now it's blasé, and all of the pop stars are doing it.
Yeah. So it really is there's no way you're going to get to the top unless you go through all of these initiations. I mean, that's so freaky.
And that's why some people make it and some people don't. Even if you have talent, but you're not willing to do these things. I don't have a lot of proof, but there is a lot of documentaries about how people who have made it to a certain point, someone close to them died. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I mean, they even say that about Kanye's mom, how she died. And yeah.
Or it could even be a miscarriage or a bobo. Right?
Yeah.
So it just has to be some kind of human sacrifice.
You even think about actors like Joaquin Phoenix, his brother died. A lot of these really big stars, they have some sort of significant death in the family. So speaking of family, this is what I wanted to ask you earlier. So someone like Britney Spears or even Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, are their families aware of what they're putting their daughters through? And if they are they kept quiet, or do they just voluntarily keep quiet because of the success? Do they know what kind of initiations their family members are going through to become stars?
I don't think at the full disclosure level, but these are people who are willing to sell their children into entertainment. And they do say that they try to work with people who already have proclivities for molestation and things like that. So they find, I'm not saying anything about Jamie Spears. This is just hypothetically, but if he was willing, if he was inappropriate with her, he would be willing to sell her to Disney. He would be,
right.
And he was her conservator.
Yeah, exactly.
For a long time.
For a very long time.
I'm not accusing anyone of anything. We're just talking about generalities and what could be, because we don't have the proof until these people come forward and tell their entire story. All we can just be as detectives. Yeah. And have suspicions about things. But they work with people of the bloodline. So when you get into tinfoil hat territory, you're going to realize that a lot of these people are connected high up, and they have families that go back and are related to, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, right? The Illuminati bloodline families. Okay. And these people, they could be closet Satanists. So I did a book report about a guy named Kurth Barker, who he was raised as a little boy and a little girl at the same time, and his family was on the surface, they were Christian, but in secret, they were a satanic family, a bloodline satanic family. Wow. And, I read that book in 2014, and all the stuff he said in there, that was even too much for me at the time. I was like, I don't know if I believe, this crazy stuff, but everything he said came true. And now I can't argue, really. So if you want to learn about that show, that's on my Rock Fan channel.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it really, you hear all this stuff, and it's you think about parents, if you have young kids out there, like you have to be really, really careful about what you're letting your kids watch, because it's no longer just on TV or just in the movies. It's also all over social media now. Like, it really concerns me when I see parents just give their children unfettered access to social media. I'm like, you have no idea what they're consuming on there. You just have no idea what's happening. It's freaky. But I want to talk now about the birth control pill.
Okay.
Because I was watching some of your episode. I think it was pretty recent. I think it was just in May. You did an episode with Rachel Wilson. And you were talking a little bit about your personal experience with the pill. I talk about it a lot on my show. I almost died from hormonal birth control when I was 20. I had a pulmonary embolism. And, you know, I haven't taken any hormonal birth control since. It's been a long time. But since then, I've spent a lot of time interviewing doctors and holistic practitioners and just trying to figure out what the pill really does, how it really affects women mentally and physically. And I just hear so many stories now of women, because I do a lot of surveys and interview women too, who have taken the pill or taken any form of hormonal birth control, and their lives have been like altered in very serious ways. So yeah, what was it like for you? Because I remember you were talking about how you had a doctor who was essentially telling you not to take the placebo so you would never menstruate.
Yeah, so I started going to the doctor, I was 19 or 20, and my complaint was just painful periods, right?
Yeah, which is pretty common.
Right. And he was like, oh, well, okay, we'll put you on the pill. And that's what they do for young girls. Like, any ailment you have, they automatically put you on the pill for acne, for anything. And, so he put me on that, and then he's like, well, we'll just skip the placebo so you never have a period. Problem solved. You know, no pain.
Yeah.
And I didn't know any better. So, yeah, I did that regimen for a couple years. And then, see, this is like the medical industry. Once they get their meat hooks in you, then you're kind of a lab rat.
Yeah.
Right? And so he wanted to do all these tests. He wanted to do a colposcopy. That's where they take little pieces of your uterus and they send them out to see if you have abnormal cells or cancerous, precancer or whatever. So they were just doing all this stuff to me, and somehow found out I had lots of endometriosis and PCOS, and so I stayed on that for a couple years, and then I just started becoming more wise to like natural holistic health. I was reading health books, because I felt crappy. I wanted to feel better.
Yeah.
And I need to help myself. So I did like a vegan phase.
Yeah.
And like I've done all of the cringy things that they recommend now in my 20s, and I got it out of the way.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, if I'm a vegetarian or vegan, then I won't have a bad period or whatever. But it did alter my personality a bit. It really hampers your ability to feel emotions, like either way, negative or positive. I didn't want to be touched. I did have no sex drive.
Yep.
So that was a problem. And come to find out, my doctor, who had put me through all of this later on, he went to prison for molesting 12 people. I wasn't part of that, but there was a class action lawsuit that sent him to prison, and so he was doing, the establishment weird experiments on fertility and birth control, and I just had my second surgery for large ovarian cysts, so they did have to remove one ovary a couple months ago because of these problems that the birth control made, and so many women, like, it's almost every woman has some kind of like issue now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The PCOS or the endometriosis or whatever. And it's what we talked about on our show is like, you don't know if the pill is preventing the pregnancy or terminating it.
That's right.
Because it could work either way. So if you have any like religious feelings about, God and conception and stuff, then you can't take the birth control because
it has abortifacient properties.
Exactly.
Yeah. So for those of you who hear that you don't know what it means, one of the abortifacient properties is that it significantly reduces the progesterone in your body. So, I mean, this is also, I think a lot of women don't even realize this. I talked about this in one of my previous episodes. You don't have, even if you were to take the placebo pill, you wouldn't even have a period. Like you don't actually menstruate when you're on the pill. When you bleed from the placebo pill, that's a withdrawal bleed. And the reason you don't menstruate is because menstruation is directly related to ovulation. So you don't menstruate unless you ovulate. But when you're on the pill, you don't ovulate because it shuts down the connection between your brain and your ovaries. So that's how you're meant to not get pregnant. Of course, there are certainly women who do get pregnant on the pill because it doesn't, an egg can possibly be released. But because you don't properly ovulate, it means you don't get the natural rise of progesterone, which is really important for general health because progesterone is known as the key mood and sleep stabilizer. So that's why a lot of women, they have their personalities totally changed or they're very angry, and because they don't have these natural rises and falls of their natural hormones. And then so when you don't have all of that, that means you don't actually menstruate. So when the women take the placebo pill, it's really just for the sake of feeling like you have a period. It's not a period, because the thing about your period is that when you menstruate, it's the lining of your uterus thickens and your endometrium thickens, and that's what makes you bleed. But that's not what makes you bleed when you take the placebo. And it's interesting you talked to about having no sex drive, because I don't think women fully understand that your sex hormones are obviously very connected to your menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
And so not only do you have no sex drive, but the pill makes women attracted to either feminine men or to other women. Like there's a psychologist named Sarah Hill. She wrote an entire book on it. And it's like the pill can make women kind of like bisexual. And then it also makes them attracted to very feminine men. So you think about all this, right? And then you also said it seems like every woman has a problem when it comes to their menstrual cycle now, because like most women do. And that's also related to the poison in our food and just very toxic lifestyles in general. But also a lot of it is because a lot of girls were given some form of hormonal birth control from a young age. And then it has me thinking like, this has to be by design. It has to be, you're making women infertile. A lot of women are infertile because of the pill. You're also making women attracted to non-masculine men. You're making women like accidentally abort their children. I'm like, so it has to be by design, right?
It is by design. And a lot of people don't understand that this is going against the very first commandment to Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply. So anything that, like I said, goes against God in the natural order is what they want to see more of. And depopulation, obviously, because they want to get the numbers down to almost zero. And they want people to suffer, right? So, the whole women be crazy is because of these hormonal imbalances.
Yeah.
And the stabbies. I had the HPV one when I was a teenager, so who knows what that kick-started. That could have caused the PCOS and the endometriosis that I was complaining about when I started going on the pill.
Right.
But, yeah, so women have a cycle that lasts 28 days, and men have a cycle that lasts 24 hours, right? So you can't expect men and women to do the same types of jobs on a day-to-day basis because, men want food at a certain time, they want sex at a certain time, they want sleep at a certain time, and it's all on a 24-hour cycle. But women, it's like 1 week you want to be active and, be frisky, and then 2 weeks later you don't want nothing to do with it because you're menstruating and all that. So you have to understand the natural cycles of your body, and when you cater to those things and when men understand like what's going on with you hormonally, then they know how to deal with you better. But the pill just whacks out all of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember you mentioned in passing, and maybe you guys got into it later in that episode, of the sort of origins of the pill and how it was it funded by the Rockefellers? So what's the story there?
Well, that was Rachel's part, so I don't exactly remember who the characters are, so I can only speak in generalities. But definitely, the legacy families, the Rockefeller Foundations, the Rothschilds, these, Eastern Coast establishment people who set up, like, universities and medical schools, and they fund these things because of the outcome that they want, right? So they write the textbooks for their agenda.
Well, I mean, this sounds like such a dumb question, but a lot of when I talk about like they, these like very rich, the wealthiest families in the world, a lot of people ask, why would they want to do this? So like, why do they want to depopulate the world?
You have to believe in good and evil and the spirit world. So you have to, you can't have a materialistic worldview if you're going to like vibe with what I'm saying, because these people are influenced by demons, and they're influenced by Satan and evil, and they want to see destruction of humanity because they hate God and they hate themselves. And so when you say, who are they? I did a show called Who Are They on Rockfin where I talk about this really good reference book that everybody should read called, The Committee of 300. So it's all about the Clo of Rome and all their different groups and families and bodies. It names all the names. It was about 20 years old, so it's not up to date, but it gives you a very good overview of who are they. Like, you can look up their name and who they're connected to and what they have established in the universities and in the medical schools. So if you want to know who are they, we did a whole show on that.
Okay, I have to go watch that.
Yeah.
Because I get that question all the time. I think one of the last reels I posted on Instagram, someone asked, I'm genuinely asking, but who are they? Because it's the more that you learn about everything from, Hollywood and then you look into the conventional medical system and big pharma, it's like it's so clear that it all ties together with this very specific agenda, and it really makes you wonder what is going on here. And then you hear a lot about, people like Bill Gates, they're buying all the farmland and, pushing the stabbies and all that stuff. And it really makes you wonder why on earth they would want to depopulate the whole world.
And to bring it back kind of to magic and the occult, pharmakeia is the ancient word that they would use for sorcery.
Really?
So that's where we get our word for pharmacy and pharmaceuticals and stuff like that.
Wow.
So pharmakeia was black magic back in the day.
Wow. Speaking of black magic, this is kind of now going back to what we were talking about with Hollywood. Megan Fox is one of those celebrities who's been very like openly talking about witchcraft and what's the word? Is it coven of witches? So what is this now? I feel like we're seeing more. And then even further than celebrities who talk about this, you get on Instagram or social media or TikTok or whatever, and there's a lot of content now about witchcraft.
Yeah.
And these women are like claiming to be witches. So what's going on there?
So I do a talk for Courtney Turner's live events called Out of the Broom Closet, about how witchcraft dovetails into the, the alphabet agenda. And yeah, witchcraft is definitely real. I give a lot of examples. Who do I talk about? Madonna. I talk about, what's her name? Marina Abramovich.
Yes. Yeah.
Super
the spirit cooking.
Yeah. Who is connected to so many people in Hollywood. Jay-Z, James Franco, Lady Gaga was one of her disciples. Who gives mock cannibal parties at galas, and they drink blood and eat heads, you know. So witchcraft, I predict, is going to be huge in the coming months and years, like even more so than it has been. I think it's going to be very trendy to be like a classic witch, even with the pointy hat and the robes and everything.
Sort of reclaiming that trope.
Yes. And Taylor Swift, in her new live concert that everyone has to go to now, even if it costs their whole rent, they're going to go see this thing. Gosh. She does a song called Willow where they do like a witch ritual, and the fans are shouting, "Summon the demons."
Really?
Yeah. So she's on board with the witches. And then fans are saying that they are having some kind of amnesia after they go to that concert. Like, that's a meme now. They can't remember anything that happened at Taylor Swift. So witches are coming out hard. And we might even see like the glorification of ugliness because, you know, your old hag witch, that's the archetype, right? And so maybe even just the permission to be as ugly as possible is going to be popular.
You know, it's funny you say that because over the last few years, it's not even just in this last year, I would say even since like 2017, 2018, I feel like the popular fashion is like just be ugly. Mm-hmm. Like these new fashion trends, even the big dad sneakers, and you see these beautiful supermodels. Somebody like Bella Hadid's a really good example. Like, I mean, yeah, sure, her face is sculpted by plastic surgery, but, you know, she was recently voted to be like the most beautiful face in the world. But if you look at her Instagram and what she chooses to wear on a daily basis, like her fashion choices, it's just like ugly fashion. It's like, it's almost as if it's the cool, trendy thing to dress as grungy and ugly as possible. And you see it with people like Billie Eilish. And it seems to be this new trend where women are making themselves look uglier as if it's the cool thing to do now. And it really makes me wonder because, you know, you think back to what women used to wear, even like the 1920s of then 30s, 40s, 50s, like the kind of dresses that women wore, they would really complement the feminine figure. And now a lot of the things that women choose to wear at this high level of high fashion is like, it's just ugly.
Well, that reminds me of the whole Balenciaga scandal. So that's a perfect example of who and what type of people are making the trends that come down to us, you know, at Target later on.
Yeah.
It's people involved in the occult. It's self-professed witches and warlocks and, you know, ugly hag type people. What was I going to say about that?
I also want to hear your take on the Kardashians.
Oh, okay. So a lot of people think that witchcraft is some kind of ancient female religion. It's not. It's very the witchcraft that we know now, it just came with Aleister Crowley and his disciples and, you know, old guys who just want to like see women naked in the forest and smack their butts. Like literally, like this is what Gerald Gardner is one of them. So they think they're worshiping nature and they think they're like with their lavender and their crystals and they're doing witchcraft, but that's not real witchcraft. Real witchcraft involves bodily fluids. So because they believe that your sex fluids have high energy in the occult world, so they use those. They use blood. They use feces, urine. Menstrual blood is a huge one. You know, like when you actually start to realize what witches cast spells with, it's really gross.
Okay, it's so funny to say that because there was a viral TikTok of a girl who was taking her menstrual blood to water her plants. And she was like, she was doing the ASMR, I'm giving my blood back to the earth. I'm giving my blood back to the plants so I can nourish them with my menstruation. And a lot of people were doing videos on how wacky it seems, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, so Marina Abramovich, she's the one who's, like you said, spirit cooking. So she would mix together poop and pee and semen and blood and paint it on the wall, right? And so this is the medium that you are going to have to be casting spells with if you want to be a true witch. It's not about like incense and
right. Just saying a couple words with a wand.
Right.
Okay.
It's gross things.
Ew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I don't know what to say. Like, one of the witch things I read is like, if you want to seduce someone, wear your tampon and your used one in your bra, and because of the pheromones in it. And
yeah, I've seen some girls now talk about how you should take essentially your discharge, your cervical mucus, and like put it on your neck as perfume now.
So that's definitely witchcraft. And we even did a show called The Satanic Witch that talks about fashion is the witch's best friend. Because in essence, what you're trying to do is glamour people or deceive them or just get whatever you can out of them by whatever means necessary.
Which makes a lot of stuff with the alphabet people, Trans. They it is almost this witchcraft thing where they totally transform themselves into a woman.
Yeah.
With the beautiful sequin dresses and the perfectly done makeup and the hair and even the surgeries and stuff.
This is what the Satanists would call self-transformative psychodrama. And a lot of the mystery schools would do this. Freemasonry adopts this technique. So in a nutshell, it's like if you want to be a werewolf or a vampire, you start wearing black and you don't go out in the daytime and you avoid garlic and you drink blood and you do all the things that a vampire would do, and one day you will be that thing. So in a way that the dressing, right, the opposite dressing is a self-transformative psychodrama in a satanic way. And then that kind of leads to the rainbow flag stuff.
Okay.
And why is that so important? Like, why are they flying that alongside of the American flag? Or, you know, at the church or whatever?
Yep.
Like, why is Methodist Church all about pride? Which is the worst sin, right? Even worse than alphabet stuff. It's like, pride is the worst sin. And this has to do with theosophy. Have you ever heard that?
I have heard that.
Okay. So supposedly there's these hidden masters, ancient people who are floating in the Himalayas in Nepal and Tibet and these like mystic places, and they speak to people and they give them insights. So theosophy was the first like kind of one world religion attempt to take all of the truth of all the different religions and roll them up and present them like this is the truth, right? But this is something we got cosmically from the hidden masters who are just floating up there like crisscross applesauce, you know? But so many of our people in government and culture, like this is where the UN came from, is theosophy. So look up Madame Blavatsky, and they're the 7 rays, they call it. So that is the rainbow imagery of the New Age movement. And it was kind of co-opted by the alphabet people, but it all means the same thing. It's like going towards one world religion under Lucifer and his Luciferic initiation. Like
the coexist bumper stickers type thing. So what can be done? Can anything be done to stop this? And I remember the very first time we filmed with Jay, I think it was a year ago. I think it was a little over a year ago. And we kind of asked him this question. I remember his answer. It's funny, I remember his answer to this day, but I'm curious to hear what you would say. Like, what can we do in the midst of all this?
It's funny because you've heard of Agenda 21, right? Now it's Agenda 30. It used to be Agenda 2000. So they have to keep bumping it because they're not at the place that
where they want it to be.
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we are pushing back. But as Christians, you know, we do have this idea that it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse until a point, the apocalypse, and when Christ comes back.
Right.
So there's nothing we can do about that. But in the meantime, we can try and push back as hard as we can and save as many people as we can and make them awake and aware and get them in the church, you know, on the ark before there's a judgment.
Before we get there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So we can fight. I mean, just watch your show, watch my show, buy the books, tell your friends and family. I mean, that's why these look so goofy, is because I wanted you to just throw it on your coffee table and let your friends and family pick it up and be like, because the number one complaint I used to get all the time is like, I have no one to talk about this stuff with. Like, I've learned so much and I'm so lonely now because my family thinks I'm crazy. I have no friends because of this. All I want to talk about is conspiracies. And so I made these as kind of a tool for you to share in a palatable way with things that everybody can relate to, pop stars, Hollywood,
Yep.
To introduce you to these kind of really heavy topics that are life-altering. I mean, you will have a breakdown when it sinks in, and you will start to search, like I did, like for the Orthodox Church or something to grasp onto.
Yeah.
Because it's going to really dissolve a lot of preconceived notions that you have about how the way the world really is.
Yeah. And it's really scary because even if you grew up in a home that was probably even Christian, I don't think we really understand how much impact the culture has on us. Because as we're talking about all of these, so I mean, I'm not someone, even when I was growing up, I was not one of those girls that had like a boy band I was obsessed with. Like I liked the Backstreet Boys, but I never went to concerts. I was never like one of the screaming girls over celebrities. Like I was never really into that stuff. But still, when we talk about the stuff, I realize how much I know about all these celebrities, how much I know about Britney Spears and Lady Gaga. And it's not because I ever liked them or because I invested time in them. It's because the culture has been so successful at seeping into our daily lives.
Yeah. I make a joke a lot, like a lot of these people, everything I know about them, I know against my will.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Like I didn't mean to know everything about the Kardashians, but it's just everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, so my first two books were actually called Operation Culture Creation, like a military operation, and to create culture, because people think these things just evolve organically based on what people like and what they don't like, but they don't know about think tanks. They don't know things like Tavistock Institute. They don't know about, these other organizations that drive culture into specific areas. Like, like rap music.
Yeah.
Is a planned thing to get people into prison.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You've heard that story.
I've heard that one. And I think it's still hard for some people to admit that. Like I even know some people on the right who like to wear the tinfoil hat sometimes, and it's still hard for them to come to terms with that one. But
not the art form, but just the subject matter.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So
the mainstream
rapping
subject
is
matter.
Cool. I love music. I love art.
Yeah.
But when you are injecting, misogyny and crime and violence and materialism, all of these things that, the mainstream, most of it promotes, rap music is designed to put young Black people in prison.
Yeah. And it has been...
It's working very well.
It's working very well. Yeah. It's been very successful. Yeah, it's really scary. You realize how much the culture has such an impact. And now... I think Gen Z is the first generation that really grew up with social media, right? Because I remember like millennials, the first exposure I had to social media, I was 16 or 17. So there was no such thing as Instagram or TikTok when I was like 10. And now you have this generation who has been online since they were like little kids. And
that's why I feel like you have these war between the sexes that we're seeing now, the red pill versus the feminists and all of this, and a lot of these people, because they're chronically online, and they don't remember a time. Like I remember a time when you base your worldview on your things that happen to you in your life and your family and the people that you talk to, right? And it was a lot more balanced than it is now. I mean, my grandma was the first one to have a computer in our family. And I didn't, we didn't have one. The first time I went to college, I had to take Computer 101 to learn, how to make a document, like how to change your fonts and like things that people just kind of know automatically now. But I remember the 90s when we were a lot more just normal. In how we relate to people and what we think about men and women and relationships and everything like that.
Yeah, so I remember even seeing there's some Twitter accounts that will share like old footage of the Star Wars movies premieres in like the 70s, and they would show all the footage of the nerds, like the so-called nerds of the 70s who would line up to go see the Star Wars movies, and they would be interviewed and stuff. And these nerds were like very well spoken. They were very engaging. They looked normal. They weren't like morbidly obese. And they were actually like quite attractive. And these are the sort of demographics that were considered the nerds of the 70s and 80s, right? And then now you fast forward to today and you see like the population at like the movie theaters now and what people look like and how they have like no social skills. And you realize it's because back then it was like people were living their lives normally and they were interacting with human beings a lot more. And now you have these younger generations that are just like totally addicted to iPads from a young age. Like, you know, we even know parents that give their iPads to kids who are like 3 or 4 years old and they just stare at it for hours a day.
So they get their worldview from statistics. They get it from, you know, echo chambers online. Anything that you want to believe, you can find a whole subreddit of people who are complaining about exactly the same thing you are. And that's how you get these like way out there red pill guys and what is it called? Pickup artists and MGTOW and just like extreme opinions because you don't have enough real life experience to go, wait a second, not every woman is like gold digger, not every man is an abuser, you know, like because I have a frame of reference of reality. Right? And, which is something they don't really have anymore.
Yeah, it's sad. Yeah, I think we got to wrap now, but this was really good. Thanks for coming out, Jamie. Everybody, Jamie drove a couple hours to be here today, so please go follow her. Send me all the links to your stuff, and we'll put it in the description, but you can also tell people where to find you.
Okay. On YouTube, Jamie Hanshaw, Hanshaw, and the show is called Out of This World, and we do really fun stuff. I have guests. Gina, would you be my guest on that show?
Yes, I would love to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll think of a show that would be good for us to do together.
Yeah.
And then if you are really brave, you can go to my Rockfin, where we talk about all things like dark, esoteric, and mind control. And that is under my name again on Rockfin, Hanshaw, and that show is called Conspiracy Science Theater. And I have 2 books that I still sell called Weird Stuff, Operation Culture Creation Part 2, and this one called Hollywood Mind Control. And you can get those at jaysanalysis.com in the shop.
Yay. Well, thanks for being here, Jamie. Thanks for listening, guys. If you like the show, please like, subscribe, follow, share, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time. Bye.